This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ephraim Graham. The battle over the president's Supreme Court nominee, Judge Brett Kavanaugh, wages on. Republicans delayed a committee vote on his nomination to hear from his accuser, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford. Her attorneys now say she wants the FBI to investigate her claims first.
If she is not going to be part of the hearing, that would be a very interesting and unfortunate turn of events.
Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley says an FBI probe would have no bearing on what Ford tells the committee, and if she doesn't testify, there is no reason to delay the vote any further. Attorney and columnist Christine Flowers is here now with more on the Kavanaugh nomination. So what are your thoughts on this current situation in the nomination process? Do you think the same thing is happening that we saw with Clarence Thomas?
Hi, good afternoon. Absolutely. You took the words out of my mouth. It's Santayana said, if we ignore history, we're doomed to repeat it. We ignored what happened with Anita Hill. I think, unfortunately, this is worse than the Anita Hill situation because this is systemic. This is not something that's limited just to judicial nominations, as we saw with Harvey Weinstein, as we saw with Bill Cosby, as we saw with Louis C.K., Kevin Spacey, the entertainment world. There is something systemic now with the Me Too movement. And while I think it started out with good intentions, it's run amok, and it's actually threatening our due process protections. And we see that so clearly in the case of Judge Kavanaugh, who is being accused in what I have called an ambush manner of activities that occurred allegedly 30 years ago. He can't defend himself. And even if it is established that there was no there and that Professor Ford's story is not supported by fact, his name is still tarnished. He's always going to have that asterisk next to his name, the nominee who was accused of sexual harassment. And that's what's happening with Clarence Thomas as well.
Now, you've written there is a dangerous mix at play here with politics and what you call gender grievances.
Yeah, it's what I don't like is the fact that victimization, presumed victimization of women, is being weaponized for partisan purposes. And I won't say that it is solely in the domain of the Democratic Party or progressives, because I come out of Philadelphia. I've seen it happen here in Philadelphia with one of our state legislators who is a Democrat, a progressive. We don't agree on any policy positions, and yet I wrote a column supporting him because the Me Too movement was being used to basically silence him, to take him off of the debate stage because of someone who said that she had been sexually abused and didn't feel comfortable in his airspace. I mean, this is becoming very dangerous when we have people who are simply, by saying, I was abused, you have to believe me, they're able to affect concrete change and stop other people from having their voices heard. And I said to someone, of course we should believe women, but when we believe women, we should remember the Scottsboro boys and the Duke lacrosse players, and maybe we should lay some flowers on Emmett Till's grave, because simply believing women in a knee-jerk fashion is going to lead to the kind of catastrophic, what I call freak show, that's happening right now in D.C.
All right, Christine Flowers, thank you so much for your time. Much appreciate your insight.
Thank you.
Militants from the Islamic terror group Al-Shabaab murdered 2 Christians in cold blood. International Christian Concern reports that it happened last Friday. The killers reportedly stopped a bus, ordered passengers off, and then tried to determine who were Christians and who were Muslims. When 2 of the passengers could not recite the Islamic statement of faith, they were tied up and executed. President Donald Trump toured North Carolina and South Carolina today as residents and relief workers begin the long process of cleaning up. The president told reporters he wants to encourage them. The storm's death toll now stands at 37. Wilmington, North Carolina remains surrounded by water, leaving residents stranded in the city or waiting to get back in to see what's left of their homes. The Parent Television Council is tracking a disturbing trend in primetime television when it comes to children and sex. And joining us now with a closer look at what children are seeing and hearing on multiple television platforms is the Council's Tim Winter. So Tim, you say more sex talk is even on situation comedies with young characters present.
Yeah, this is a very disturbing new trend that we've just uncovered and released a report on. Ironically, we released our report the very same day that Leslie Moonves, the CBS chief executive officer, was let go by CBS for his sexual conduct toward women in the workplace. What we found, including the very network that he was once CEO of recently, as well as the other broadcast networks, literally 81% of situation comedies, comedy programs that are marketed as family comedies, include dialogue, sexually explicit dialogue, where the characters are discussing it in front of the child characters. This is 81%. The very conduct that Mr. Moonves was fired for, the adults are talking about, laughing at, asking us to be entertained by, and they're doing this all within a show where the children in the program are present. Each of these shows is marketed by the TV network as appropriate for family and child viewing as young as 14 or even younger in many cases. So this is a very disturbing new trend. If Hollywood is going to be serious about the Me Too movement, as your first guest just discussed in her very powerful piece, I think Hollywood needs to stop asking us to be entertained by and laugh at the very same conduct that is ruining lives.
Are you also seeing more children talking about sex?
We are. We're seeing increasingly, also on family situation comedies, we're seeing the child characters are frequently the ones who are delivering the most salacious, sexually explicit dialogue. So it's not just the adults. This is our most recent finding, is that the adults are doing it in front of the children. But also we have of documentation that shows an increasing amount of where the children actors themselves are also delivering the more explicit lines that I guess we've become accustomed to seeing adults deliver. Now the children are doing it too.
Now this is happening on the networks and on video services like Netflix and other streaming platforms?
Yeah, what we looked at was what is considered by most to be the safest of all the platforms: broadcast television, primetime television, broadcast network television. When you get into cable, it gets even more explicit. When you go online, Netflix, Hulu, those programs, original programs, even more explicit. So even the safest, arguably, of all the platforms, broadcast television, the publicly owned airwaves, is having this trend on their platform as well. And we want to make sure that the advertisers are aware of what they're sponsoring, because they make these programs possible by virtue of their media dollars.
That said, what advice do you have for parents?
It's incumbent upon parents to be a huge piece of the solution. That's why the Parents Television Council's here. We're advocating for parents, help channeling voices to push back on the networks. But parents need to understand that rating system where it says TV, PG, TV 14 in the corner before the show starts, those are very inaccurate. They are misleading. They tend to show content that is more explicit than what that rating really says.
All right, Tim Winter of the Parents Television Council, thank you so much for your time.
Good day from Los Angeles. Good to be with you.
Great information. Much appreciated. Coming up, a refreshing and natural way to take care of your health and your home. We've got the story coming up right here on CBN NewsWatch. Don't go away. Many people are concerned about the chemicals they're exposed to in cleaning products and even in the things that they apply to their bodies. Lori Johnson shows us how many people are moving to detox and replacing chemicals with essential oils.
Like millions of Americans, Sarah Hilburn struggled with emotional issues that led to physical ones.
I had gotten to the point where my anxiety and depression was keeping me from sleeping at night. I would spend several days out of the week just being awake the entire night, being awake the entire day.
Instead of seeking a prescription for Ambien or Lunesta, she turned to lavender oil.
I can honestly say that essential oil saved my life.
Putting the oil in a vaporizer next to her bed helped her begin getting more rest and in turn feeling happier.
I diffuse the lavender usually by itself just because it's very calming and it smells really good and it makes me sleepy.
Sarah also found other benefits. She puts cooling peppermint oil on her feet when she's feeling overheated and credits rose oil for her flawless complexion.
Oils extracted from plants have been used for medicinal purposes for centuries, but just in recent years, essential oils have exploded in popularity.
In his best-selling book, The Healing Power of Essential Oils, Dr. Eric Zielinski explains how to use dozens of these natural extracts.
You know, the Bible says the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nations. I can think of no other substance on the planet that epitomizes that like essential oils.
Essential oils come from distilling parts of plants like the root, bark, flowers, and leaves.
When you inhale citrus essential oils specifically, like orange, neroli, bergamot, lime, and lemon, it's been shown clinically to help decrease anxiety, decrease depression, and boost your mood. A lot of research being done with cinnamon and blood pressure balancing. So whether someone's diabetic, someone's obese, there's a lot of things you could do.
Even many pills we take mimic what's in nature. Aspirin, for example, is modeled after willow bark, which people used for centuries as a pain reliever.
So next time your son or daughter, your grandson, your granddaughter gets a fever, you can apply some diluted peppermint or orange oil on his or her back, and you'll see the fever go down. Next time you get a sore throat, you could gargle with a little bit of myrrh essential oil and water. Next time you get a headache, you can apply some pain-relieving oils like frankincense or copaiba.
And benefits go beyond relying on the medicine cabinet. Dr. Zielinski and his wife Sabrina use essential oils instead of store-bought synthetics throughout their home, from body lotion to deodorant and beyond.
More people who are concerned about the chemicals in household cleaners are choosing essential oils because they clean naturally.
Sabrina makes her own laundry detergent using ylang-ylang. No chemicals and about $20 to wash 150 loads.
So when you're thinking about not just your kids, but your animals as well, it's really important to choose the right things when you're cleaning.
That includes mixtures for dusting, cleaning glass, granite, and even tougher jobs.
But what about like your all-purpose cleaner? What about, my stove? Is this really gonna work on the stove? Yes. Usually it has an orange, a clove, a cinnamon, a eucalyptus. It smells amazing. I mean, wait till you smell this. You're gonna be like, wow, that smells like Thanksgiving.
In just minutes, you can whip up hand sanitizer.
All you need is a 2-ounce glass spritzer bottle, 10 drops of essential oil. My favorite is lemon. Then you need 10 drops of witch hazel, 10 drops of a grain alcohol, and then you fill the rest of the bottle up with either purified or distilled water. Shake and go.
Since essential oils are highly concentrated, it's best to dilute them using what's known as a carrier oil, like jojoba. And watch out for fakes.
It is absolutely necessary to only use pure essential oils. What most people don't recognize is what a lot of these manufacturers are doing are synthetically adding different chemicals to essential oils and to other compounds to make them smell sweeter. And that's where you get your plugins from, your aerosols. And they have been linked to a number of diseases, neurotoxicity, cancer. We're talking Alzheimer's and dementia.
He recommends organic oils indigenously sourced with a batch report showing they're the real deal. So these days, Americans increasingly turn to natural, wonderful-smelling essential oils for healing, personal care, and around the house. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
And CBN's health reporter Lori Johnson joins us now. So it sounds like there are essential oils for just about anything. What are some that can be used when it comes to healing?
Well, really, one of the most popular ones, my favorite, is oil of oregano, also called oregano oil. And you have to, again, make sure that it's the pure stuff, the organic, 100% pure essential oil. There are a lot of fakes out there, but oregano oil is called nature's antibiotic because it performs the exact same tasks that antibiotics do, except you don't have the awful side effects. We've been hearing so much about gut health and how antibiotics kill so much of the good bacteria in our guts. We really do want to try to stay away from antibiotics when possible. And we know that oregano oil kills infections that antibiotics do too. Infections like the common cold, that's a viral infection, but also some other types of infections. And what you want to do with oregano oil is put a few drops in some water. You never want to use an essential oil straight. So if you're taking it in a glass of water, you want to put about 3 drops in, stir it around in some water, and you can do that once or twice a day for 10 days, no more than 2 weeks. If you're putting an essential oil on your body, you've got to use that carrier oil. Jojoba, that's one, but we also found that coconut oil is a great carrier oil, and anybody can find that at the local store. Another great use for an essential oil for healing purposes is tea tree oil. It smells fantastic. It's great for acne. Also things like fungi, like on your toenails and on your feet, and head lice, all kinds of things. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yeah, we used a lot of that with our kids growing up.
Good for you.
Where do people get information about recipes for essential oils?
Well, like I said, there are so many different uses, and it's really fascinating. It's really exciting, and you know what? It's cheap too. So I mentioned this book in the story. This is a great cookbook, all types of ways to use the essential oils, The Healing Power of Essential Oils by Eric Zielinski. You can find more information about the book on our website, but there are other people who are really into essential oils. Dr. Josh Axe is another big one, so you can go online, and as far as like which oils to buy, again, this is very popular, so all the fakes are out there, and I hate to say this, but one way to recognize the good ones from the bad ones, price. So if you find a bottle of essential oils for $7, and also just look on the label. If you see sort of chemically sounding things that, the words are 14 letters long, you don't know how to pronounce it, that's a chemical. Stay away from that.
Indeed, indeed. Good advice, good information. Lori Johnson, always excellent. Thank you so much.
Well, I became a believer at first when I was doing this story. I was like, not so sure about essential oils, but after I did a lot of research, I've started incorporating it into my lifestyle and making my own soaps and shampoos and things like that. So
I love it.
I became a convert.
You're making us a believer too. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
There's lots of talk these days about what it means to be a boy or a girl. Next, one expert weighs in on the importance of letting boys be boys. With so much talk about gender identity, it can be confusing, especially for children. But does it have to be? Joining us now is Mark Hancock with Trail Life USA. He's also the author of the book, Let Boys Be Boys. So, Mark, what are you seeing today that led you to feel you had to write this book?
Well, I originally wrote the book for the 6,000 adult leaders of Trail Life USA who are ministering to 20,000 boys across the country. We just realized that we've done a great job with girls and bringing them up to speed in terms of science and technology over the last generation. But classrooms have been designed for girls. And so many of our programs, even our Sunday schools and people who are ministering to boys are ministering in a girl-friendly environment. And it's affected boys. Boys are now 2 times more likely to be diagnosed for special education, 3 times more likely ADHD, and they've fallen behind in every category academically behind girls. And so we really feel like there needs to be a focus put on boys. Without ignoring girls, there needs to be focus putting back on the unique learning styles of boys. So I thought this book was important.
What message do you think is most important for boys today and children overall?
Well, we've got to recognize that boys are different than girls. And I know that's politically incorrect. That may offend some people, but that's just the truth. Biologically, psychologically, there's so much evidence that they're just built different. Their eyes are different. They see different. They hear different. Their brains work differently. And so it's important that we recognize that. And so if we can start from that as our foundation, we recognize that. When we talk about the Me Too movement and toxic masculinity, that really that starts with training boys properly in the beginning. And when they recognize that they are made by God and who it is that they're created in his image, and that girls are too, and that women are to be respected for their strengths and their talents and what it is that they're good at. And then we recognize that boys and girls have their unique strengths and unique talents. That's the first step in really starting to reach out and make a difference with boys.
What do you think parents need to know when it comes to raising boys? I imagine your book will also help with that.
Yeah, I think it does. I think we just, like I said, we do need to recognize that they are different. We need to give them some freedom in different areas. We need to recognize that the physical is extremely important to boys. They've got to be able to move. We got to let them get up and move. The fact that we're moving recess from schools is really harmful to boys. And we have to be as intentional about planning our play for boys as we are about planning our learning, because the play is a big part of learning. When they are playing, when they are physical, their brain is more engaged, they're learning better. So I would encourage parents, if you're working with your son, understand the fidgeting, the moving around. That's part of him knowing intuitively that his body needs to move in order to learn. And when we tell them to sit still, be quiet, and listen up, that's very challenging because they're wired to be able to be physical and move while they're learning. So I tell people who are in classroom environments or even our Trail Life USA troops, take the chairs out of the room, throw a bunch of Legos and things on the ground. Let the boys play with those things while you're talking to them, because that fidgeting and that moving around and that permission to move around is really opening up their brains, and they're learning much better.
With all this talk of gender identity these days, what would you say to parents to encourage them and their children as they face all of this?
Well, it is challenging, and that's the environment that our sons are being raised up in. And so we've got to be restored to the biblical model that recognizes that men and women, boys and girls, are different. And we have to start with that. And the culture seems to be screaming a different message to our sons, but they've got to recognize the unique strengths that they have, that God made them as protector. God made them with that physical drive. God made them to think the way that they think. Send two boys to a water fountain. They're going to race. They're not just going to walk together. That's in them to compete. And when we start giving out participation trophies, we're not allowing them to do what it is that God created them to do, to really take those kind of risks and compete. So we've got to be open to those kind of ideas and recognize that they're just different.
Absolutely. Mark Hancock, author of Boys Will Be Boys. We appreciate your time. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Efren.
Coming up, see the baptism of a little guy who was so excited. Just wait until you see what he did. We've got that story coming up next. And finally, for a Wednesday, some video for you. It's of a little boy named Jordan standing with his pastor, so excited to get baptized and publicly proclaim his faith in Jesus. He obviously thought the pastor was taking too long and took matters into his own hands.
Upon the profession of your faith in the Lord Jesus Christ, I now baptize you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
You can hear him say, "I'll do it," as the crowd erupts in laughter. What a beautiful sight. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.